Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Wild Moments show powered by explore.org. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and there's a new face joining us today. And for those of you, maybe he looks familiar, that is Ben Coley. Hello, Ben. It's so great to have you on today's show.
So, Taylor, thank you so much to you and for Africam for having me. I'm very excited to be here and feel like this is a bit of a test. But yeah, looking forward to offering hopefully some interesting opinions and insights.
Oh, absolutely. We're always looking for new people and new insights, that's for sure. And I love learning, and so does everybody else that's watching. It's easy. We've got quite a few people joining us today. Zygote has said, hello, Taylor McCurdy and Ben. Ben also has a surname, Zygote. But it's funny how people always mention my surname when they meet me. It's strange. And you're quite excited to have a look and chat about Ezulwini. Aussie Jan, you've said good afternoon. Your coffee is ready and you're going to drink it soon. It's too hot for us in the afternoon. I'm on water today. Ben made tea. Ben's drinking tea.
Of course he did.
Katie, you said hello. Amber, you've also said happy Thursday and a big welcome to Ben. And you're also looking forward to learning something new. Rose, yeah, elephants, we are excited to, and obviously we can't wait to get going. I think we've got some interesting clips. Quite a few of them contain elephants today. So shall we wait any longer? I think we should just get straight into it and have a look at an interesting scene where two of nature's giants pass each other's paths. Ha, there we go. We have an elephant and a crocodile. Oh my goodness.
You can see who's going to win this exchange. I like the fact we've got a kudu photo bombing in the background as well.
Always. There's always just something else lurking that you don't always spot. I think my own picture was hiding that kudu. So this is quite interesting. Looks like a young elephant bull, which I'm not shocked by this behavior. They are always so curious and seeing how else they can test each other's strength. And this poor crocodile is just kind of just resting up, hey? Just enjoying the sun, basking in the sun, if you will.
Yeah, it looks like he's trying to warm up, looking into the sun with his mouth open there. But I agree, it's not a great deal of aggression, more curiosity, as you said. But yeah, classic young elephant bull behavior.
Oh my goodness,
This will
we've
be
got
more
more into
interesting
it.
with a female with a little one.
Absolutely. I think we could have a different reaction here. I don't know if she's going to be too tempted to mess with a croc with a young one at her side. But we'll see what the little one gets up to in a moment. Are you going to go be tempted by the crocodile, or are you going to also take a wide berth like Mum?
Spray some water at it, maybe.
That would be interesting. That would be quite fun to watch, actually. The crocodile doesn't seem to be too perturbed anyways. And for those of you who are just joining us now, so we've got Durrell, you've said good day and a warm welcome to Ben. You've also said that Toronto has skipped spring and gone straight to summer. Well, that's exciting. Congratulations for sunshine. Gemma, you've also just jumped on board. It's great to have you again, of course. You've said that you're done with your gardening. I need to actually go and do some gardening, but that sounds like a tomorrow problem. Now, there is a question from Gigi, Ben, and I'm not sure if you want to maybe tackle this one. She would like to know, would a crocodile attack the baby?
I would not with mum around, I don't think, but if a very small, depends on the size of the crocodile, that's not the biggest croc you'll ever see, but if a youngster was bold enough to come down and have a drink on its own without the protection of the herd, I see no reason why the croc might not, but I've never seen it myself. My instantly go to the sort of the just so stories, of course, about how the elephant got its trunk. I don't know if you've ever witnessed it, but I've never seen it happen. But the crocodile is such an opportunistic predator that I would thought if the opportunity is there, but you could see there was no great aggression from either party there. I think there's a mutual respect between them. I actually thought particularly that young bull was going to rather sort of harass the croc and chase him out the way. But I think it just shows a mutual respect that, yeah, you can have that little corner of the shore. We'll respectfully go around the other side of the bush and go about our business.
I completely agree. Like what Ben said, it wasn't a very big crocodile. It looked only maybe like 2.5 meters. It's a bit difficult to sort of guess when you're looking at it on camera, but just in comparison to the size of that young bull. And I have seen it. I have spoken about it before on the show, where I've seen a crocodile in the Zambezi launch up and grab an elephant, a fully grown elephant's tail. It was a breeding herd crossing one of the channels from the main river back towards mainland again. And then there have been plenty of videos surfacing social media where elephants, well, there's videos actually of the crocodile launching out the river, grabbing hold of an elephant's trunk. So, I mean, we don't see it all the time, but definitely elephants are living in big river systems. They encounter crocodiles more frequently than not. But, in these private game reserves where the rivers don't flow all year round, and, we don't normally see too much interaction, but it's super interesting. But those bulls are gutsy, as Zygote described it. They're really just taking a chance. They're kind of chickens when they're that age. I mean, if you sneeze too loudly next to them, they panic and they also sort of move off. So they're really just testing the waters, if you will. And Kauru, you said that croc looks so small next to the elephant. It does. It really does. I think it's actually quite a nice size scale. If we had to have a look at maybe 4.5, 5 meter croc, which is really, really big, and then you can understand how long these creatures are and why I describe them as nature's giants. Although this one not being a particular giant. You can also see there's a tiny little bird. I think is it a blacksmith lapwing that's frolicking about in front of the crocodile. It's a bit hard to tell, to sort of give you size. So it's not the,
maybe.
Oh, yes, of course. I forgot about the plovers, the three-banded plovers. It could be that little. So not the world's biggest crocodile, but pretty brazen. Just sort of standing.
Crocodile, I was going to say, the crocodile's got some, I'm trying to think of a PC word for it, but yeah, relatively brave to stand his ground in front of that. I was actually very surprised here. I thought the mother here with a young one in tow would at least just sort of usher it into the water. So yeah, interesting to be the sort of the level of respect that you see between the two. I mean, even though the croc's going back to basking, it really doesn't look too fussed whatsoever. But I saw it actually not that long ago with a female elephant with her calf, and there were lions in the road, and we were sort of sitting there waiting for the female to chase the lions, and she never really did. It was actually very similar behavior, a lot of looking, flashed a bit of dust here and there, and then just sort of took a wide berth and carried on with what they were doing. I'm surprised she's left the youngster unattended. So perhaps, as you said, the size thing, she was not too fussed about it. But I sort of agree with what you said there as well. Being uh, on a reserve system, chances are these elephants have visited this waterhole many times. This crocodile is probably resident here. And so maybe there is some sort of unspoken, oh, it's you again, or just go our separate ways.
I think that's exactly it. Oh, Jan, you've just made it in time. That's perfect. You've also said yay, Taylor and Ben. I know, quite exciting. I thoroughly enjoy Ben. I think we've got a very similar sense of humor as well. But anyways, enough about the elephant and the crocodile. We're going to have a look now at something else that's quite cute. And it is a scene from, I'm going to see if it's actually from the Zambezi River or perhaps a natural pan down at Tembo Plains. Oh, I didn't mean to give that little calf a fright. No, obviously I didn't do that. A young little hippo sort of just grazing about. That's very sweet. So,
Yeah, it looks a little again difficult to get a size there. It looks a little unsteady on its feet.
and also, there we
Ah,
go.
there we go.
That's what we needed. And you can also use, I think it's a water thickener or something. Oh, in the background. Leave mom's tail alone.
It's like what she's practicing to be a crocodile, like what you said before, jumping out of the river and grabbing an elephant's tail.
This is a very young hippo calf, as you can see. I mean, it could just about squeeze underneath mom's belly. And if you've ever seen a hippopotamus in real life out of the water, you'll know that there isn't much space between the level of the ground and the belly itself. So this is a tiny tot. Obviously, I think, like Ben said, quite young, Maybe a little bit unsteady on its feet, but it could also be because of the ground. But I wouldn't put it past maybe, I don't know, what would you say? No more than 3 months. I think even younger than that.
Hmm.
But I'm just being a
Sounds
bit
about right.
generous.
Yeah, they are surprisingly small when they are young. What are they? Only about 30, 40 kilograms at birth. And yeah, surprisingly short gestation period compared to similar sized animals. But I can't say I've ever seen one nibbling at mum's tail before.
I personally believe that young hippos are the cutest animal out there. I really don't think that you get anything cuter. I mean, they're like they look like the shape, sorry, of a jelly bean with these oversized sort of heads and then just gums. I've heard so many times, every time I've posted a picture with a young hippo with its mouth open, people are frantically panicking, going, "Where's its teeth?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, it hasn't grown them yet," kind of thing. So, not hurting mom's tail at all, really just sort of nibbling away, which is very, very sweet. And they're curious. They also chase crocodiles. I've had some amazing sightings of young crocs on the Mara River chasing crocodiles back into the water. And you can almost see, I mean, crocodiles don't show much emotion, but you can almost see the disgust on the croc's face by a tiny little hippopotamus, as you said, weighing well under 50 kilograms, pushing this croc that probably weighs closer to a ton into the water, which is quite entertaining. But I wanted to
Mutual
actually
respect of mum.
absolutely. I did want to mention something very quickly about Tembo planes. I'm quite excited about this camera. And for those of you that don't know where it is, it's in Zimbabwe and it's part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site that forms Mana Pools. So Mana Pools is that famous wilderness area where the elephants stand up on their back legs and feed from the winterthorn trees. And Timber Plains is just downstream from that. But what is hugely fascinating about this is that it used to be called the Sapi area, and it was a hunting concession. So they used to do extensive hunting in there, but now they've ceased hunting completely, and they've turned that whole area. I'm just trying to think. I think it's how many hectares is it? I just have to remember now. 118,000 hectares of wilderness area. Which is very exciting, right on the Zambezi River. But what I personally find fascinating is just behind the Zambezi River, the sort of the escarpment that runs in Zimbabwe called the Trorore Mountains, is a great like archaeological sort of site. They have found evidence of dinosaurs. There are even dinosaur footprints left in some mud that hardened, obviously, and probably in late Jurassic period. It's like 150 million years ago, which is quite exciting, from the Allosaurus and the Brachiosaurus. So one predatory, one carnivorous dinosaur, and then the Brachiosaurus kind of looks like a Brontosaurus, the one with the long neck, because I'm sure everyone's watched Jurassic Park, but some interesting things that we'll definitely get into. But we've got some questions. Kim, you said that you see that baby hippo every single night. That's so cute to watch it grow. It must be amazing. And then Gigi, you said, were hippos hunted? Absolutely, like extensively. And I don't know if you want to add anything to hippos being hunted.
I haven't got anything specific to add, but certainly I know they've been hunted from a sort of a leather and from a skin, and obviously from the teeth, sort of semi-ivory perspective. But I couldn't give you any specific figures. I did spend a year working in Katavi National Park up in Tanzania about a decade ago now, which is reputed to have one of the biggest populations of both hippos and crocs there. And we often used to go to an area where, particularly during the dry season, these poor hippos were just crammed in like sardines there in this horrible fetid mud. And plenty of crocs in the area as well. But I never saw any massive altercations between them. But we used to go down hoping for it. But they've always, a bit like the elephant we saw there, that sort of respectable distance between them. But I'd be interesting to hear from you, with particularly up in what you were just saying about the area there, in terms of any hippo hunting exploits that you know of there.
So hunting. Thankfully, a lot of places in Zambia have actually ceased hunting, and there's only very specific areas. On Zimbabwe, it's a slightly different side, but we're not going to go into that at all. So yes, in that particular area, they were hunting a variety of animals, and hippos were most certainly one of them. But in South Africa, well, in Africa, they were obviously, this is a story some of you have probably heard before, they were added to the big five, the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt. And can you imagine a brave old hunter standing on the banks of a river or a dam and shooting at a hippo while it's in the water? That really doesn't take much skill at all. It was only later that, when they figured out how dangerous hippos were out on land, that they maybe thought that they should have swapped some of those animals around. So don't mess with a hippo. But thankfully, all those hippos will now be safe. There's another question from Rose, and she's asked, talking about the hippos, do they eat the mother's dung? I read that baby elephants do this for nutrients. She looks like that little calf is trying to get the dung straight from the source. I'm just teasing. So Rose, they definitely do that, but quite often young animals will eat their mother's dung to bring in some of those very important bacteria into their stomach. That's a super important reason. So elephants do that for that reason, and I would imagine that hippos are going to do the same things, introducing that bacteria nice and young, and that will help with digestion, and also you don't want to get too sick all the time. So quite
something I'd actually quite like to check on there, because the hippo's digestion is slightly different from all the others. It's a foregut fermenter like a ruminant, but doesn't have those 4 stomachs. I know the 3 stomachs of the hippo have got specific names, and it's whereas most hindgut fermenters like elephants and warthogs and zebras, they have their enlarged cecum at the back. The hippos do their fermentation before the true stomach, but without actually the use of the rumen. So that still requires a massive amounts of microorganisms. So I'm sure they do, but I'm trying to rack my brains now to think if I've ever actually seen it happening. But I agree, I'm sure they must do. But it'd be interesting, actually, I should go and have a look at that, because they're different digestive system, that they must need to get those things from somewhere, because it's not a rumen. They must have to stock up that bacteria from somewhere, certainly.
Yeah, so something actually to have a look at to see if they ingest it for the microflora. You'll have to just stay tuned so that we can follow up with that. But anyways, we have got another interesting clip, and I know that Zygote in particular was interested about this, as we have a look at one of the last tuskers roaming around the parts of the Greater Kruger. Look at how magnificent he is. So this is in Baludi Game Reserve, and he's such a beautiful elephant. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. I almost want to just sit and watch him, and we should, if he does continue to drink, we should be able to hear him drinking quite nicely. You can just hear the crickets every now and then, but it might not be able to hear too much of the slurping. Some cameras have got better sounds than others. Just a little bit of the sort of spraying water. But this particular elephant is in no rush, and his name is Ezulwini. And he is probably the tusker that I have seen the most in my guiding career. I haven't seen very many tuskers, a couple, but mainly in East Africa rather than sort of Southern Africa. But this particular individual, he is such a gentle giant. He's quite old, not as old as an elephant can get, but they've sort of guessed that he's somewhere between 45 and 50, and probably closer to the age of 50. And a good way to sort of see how old elephants are, when they start to reach, over 60, coming to their 70s, you'll often see just above where their eyes are, where it's almost where their temporal glands are, they get these huge sunken in, I don't know what the correct terminology is, and please save me, Ben. They're sort of just above their eyes, they get like these sunken cavities. Dimples, yeah, dimples. The elephant's dimple, and I have them in a different spot. So you sort of see this part over here, and they become so saggy, and you'll see how the skin sort of stretches down from their spine, just as somebody would naturally age. You can see that, but he still looks fit and healthy, and he's definitely in the prime
And
of his
those
life.
tusks are in such beautiful condition as well. They're so symmetrical. Even the points are almost identical. The length, the possibly the right one looks like it might have slightly better circumference to it, but it's not often you see an elephant with at that age, certainly with such symmetrical tusks. I'm trying to
No.
think whether I've actually ever seen Ezulwini myself. I don't think so, but I know he does pop into Pridelands every now and again, just here outside Hoodspray where we are. But I've seen a couple of big ones down in the south of Kruger. I've tried to find out which ones they are because, of course, there's a whole list of emerging tuskers and current tuskers. The majority of them being found up in the north, but there are sort of three or four which sort of frequent the south of Kruger. And I remember seeing one very close to Gardenia Hyde, sort of in between, well, not too far from Malalan, sort of Crocodile Bridge area. And I was very surprised when I saw an enormous tusk, not quite dragging along the ground, but that's the one that always pops into my head. But it was sort of a long distance view. But I think I must have come across Ezulwini at some point because I've worked in this area on and off for nearly 20 years, but I don't think I've ever had a proper sighting of him. But yeah, as you say, with those Tuskers, I mean the seven originals. I see somebody asked a question there as well about is there a risk of potentially showing them? Kim, you're worried about that? Well, of course, we can never say never, but thankfully, elephant poaching for ivory isn't so bad, or as it used to be, certainly. And yeah, we live in an age now where the more we can actually show people things and raise awareness, you can argue that it's actually a protection method as well because they become celebrities as such. And of course, the first time we saw that was with those classic magnificent seven bulls of the Kruger area, which was around in the 80s now. And I think there's at least five of them have got their tusks there in the Letaba Elephant Museum. And if you ever get a chance to go and have a look, I mean, you really should. They are some seriously impressive specimens there, 2.5 meters, maybe even more, some of them.
Absolutely. So Izulwini, I'm sure you would have come across him at some point. But something that's quite
Mm.
interesting about tuskers is that it's not normally you can't normally pick out a tusker from when they're young. I spoke to the team at Elephants Alive, and they do a lot of the leading research on elephants throughout southern Africa for the most part, but specifically sort of the greater Kruger area. And they said that they see a surge in tusk growth with elephants that do carry the gene. It's funny that we call it a gene now, when in fact most elephants used to have large tusks. Like, it wouldn't have been an abnormal sight 150, 200 years ago. And they said that normally happens from the ages in sort of into their mid 30s into their early 40s. That's when they really have that massive growth spurt. Because there's a lot of people are saying, why don't we just collar all the tuskers? It would be great, but you want to try and collar an animal that you're going to suspect is a tusker, and not collar them later on in life. So the Ezulwini isn't collared, and one of the reasons behind that is that that he is seen regularly. He lives in an area called sort of the D block, and it's quite a vast area in Baluli, and that's where he spends his time. So elephants are also, yes, they're nomadic to a degree, but old elephant bulls, they find their favorite places. He's got his favorite water holes, his favorite pathways, and we normally see him in Pridelands, Eco Training's Pridelands, as soon as he goes into must. He does the surge, and then he pushes quite far south, and then he also extends into the eastern parts of Klasiri. He goes up into the Timbavati, and then he kind of comes back in search of females. So really, really lucky to see him, and he's a gentle giant. Even when he is in must, so that state where they have got an overproduction of testosterone, and that's the drive to obviously go out and look for females in estrus and other areas. He's really relaxed. He knows how big he is. He doesn't charge cars. He can be a bit cheeky sometimes, but he's such a wonderful elephant. And then I saw there was a question about, Tim, you said, where is the best place to see tuskers? So as Ben was saying, unfortunately, we don't see many tuskers in southern Africa anymore. So I would say if you go up into Kenya, and if you go into Amboseli, National Park, or you move around towards Tsavo National Park as well. Those two places, I think, are still the best places to see some of the last remaining tuskers. But elephants in Kenya are so phenomenal. Their tusks just seem to be so much larger than so many different than so many of the other elephants. Even in Tanzania, I saw some elephants with big tusks. In Zambia, I've hardly seen any. Botswana, I've hardly seen any, and then a couple here. But it's quite sad as to how this has happened. It's almost like it's the opposite of the Darwin theory, if you've ever heard of it, where individuals with the best genes have been systematically eliminated, which is quite sad. So now we're seeing elephants that are producing smaller tusks because that gene is just not as prominent in so many individuals as it once was, which is very sad. And then I think there are a couple more. Andy, yes, this was something I would have loved to have brought up, but I'm glad you mentioned it. You said Ezulwini means heaven. Yes, that's absolutely does. It comes from, it's a Zulu term. And then Tim, you've asked what defines a tusker. It's got to do with the length of tusk. If I'm not mistaken, the tusk needs to be longer than, I think it's 1.5 meters, but I almost want to say 1.8 meters in length. But I just need to double check. I've actually answered this question a few times, but now it's gone from my
So I asked it strangely the other day, and I did a quick check, and actually, what I found on the sandparks information was an individual tusk being in excess of 50 kilograms in terms of
okay.
weight rather than the actual length. But I guess the two go hand in hand unless they have particularly broad ones. So, as far as I'm concerned, from a Kruger perspective, they seem to think individual tusks weighing more than 50 kilograms.
But then that's cheeky of them because most of the Magnificent Sevens tusks didn't weigh more than 50 kilograms. They were kind of just under. So I think it's a couple of different things that maybe a combination of the weight, the girth of the tusk, and then, of course, the length. But they do. I did also read that the biggest elephant bull that was ever found in Africa was in Angola. And he weighed about 11 tons, which is quite spectacular in terms of weight. This would have been a very long time ago. I imagine that this elephant must have been found. I don't even know, how would you weigh an elephant in the early 19th century. But anyways, and that's unfortunately when most of the elephants were hunted in Africa. But like Ben said, thankfully that's not as common of a problem anymore. There's so much protection being done with these animals, and sadly people seem to be poaching other things, which is slightly devastating. I think we've got one more clip, don't we? We do, or have I made that up? Oh, we do. We're
Imagine
going to
how long it
sneak
took them to get to this stage. Giraffes take so long just to come down for a drink. Imagine how much courage they had to pluck up to get to here.
Absolutely. I never used to think giraffe would cross rivers ever in my entire life. And then it
Mm.
just all of a sudden it just started happening. I saw them crossing rivers in the Eastern Cape. I saw them crossing very deep waters of the Mara River in Kenya. And you can see if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the Olifants River, the shallow, it's quite shallow here. So they don't seem to be too perturbed. Mom's heading off. Youngsters not having
Mm.
anything to do with it though.
Yes, I'm so, yeah, I'm not sure if I like this plan.
Oh, I suppose its tummy's a lot closer to the water. When you've
Mm.
got mom's height, then it's normally a much easier thing to do. And they're also very vulnerable when crossing the waters like this, especially because, or depending on the substrate, if it's quite rocky, they could slip and fall quite easily. If it's very muddy, when I was in the Eastern Cape, there was a giraffe that actually got stuck in the mud crossing the Bushman's River, and he had to be helped out because he couldn't get out anymore, which was quite sad. He sort of just sat there, and it's a tidal river, so the tides would rise and then they would drop again. Thankfully, he had a long neck.
That's a built-in snorkel.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you can see giraffe is silly that it didn't just follow the pathway that mom must have walked, because I'm sure she's crossed at
Yeah.
this point. You can see it's quite prominent for animals to come down
A
and drink
sizable
there.
river too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So a couple of things there, just
Just looking back.
not agreeing with that
That's interesting.
little.
I'm sure it's all, again, that sort of innate genetic knowledge of fearing water that you can't see. An interesting comparison between that and what we saw earlier with the elephant and the crocodile, where the elephant is not particularly scared of the crocodile, but a giraffe lives its life being terrified of getting grabbed by a croc, I'm sure, when it comes down for a drink. And I think that's a bit of an example there of genetic knowledge of that intrinsic fear of a crocodile, whereas the elephant was quite happy to just have a look at it and wave his trunk a little bit. And the giraffe is not having any of it. That youngster is like, mm-mm, and doesn't quite have the experience. It'd be interesting to see the first time the female did that, as to how much time it took for her to pluck up the courage to deal with those inner demons.
Kind of reminds me of the Great Migration, where everybody lines up at the river and goes
Mm.
back 500 times before eventually taking the plunge. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for you today on Wild Moments. But I hope that you enjoyed everything. And thank you so much for your questions and comments. They were wonderful. And of course, Ben, it was so lovely to have you join us. And I hope that this is the first of many.
I hope so too.
But yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it was lovely to be here. Like I said, I felt like it was a bit of a test, having not seen the clips beforehand. I was a little nervous, but no, it was all good and really interesting behavior and some insights there. Thank you.
And that's exactly what the show is about, the best of the clips for the week. So remember to join us again next Thursday where we do it all again. But until then, cheerio.